Live, it is the immediate aftermath of Eubank Jr. versus Benn, the workout. I'm joined by the main event, the one and only Castillo.
Big man thing, yeah, we're out here, bruv. It's been a mad day. It's been a mad day.
It's been a mad day. I mean, as far as workouts go, I can't really remember too many in my time that have been as mental as this. How did you enjoy it?
I'm not going to lie, yeah. I was enjoying it, but you could cut the tension with a knife. Like, it's actually... Don't know what's going on right now. Like, literally, 1 minute it felt like I was really excited. Then it was like nothing's happening. Like, what is happening?
It's a good question. At the minute, I think the party line from the promoters and the fighters, who, of course, it's important to point this out that they're the ones who want to get paid. So they're, we want to proceed with the fight. Team
Money,
Eubank, money, exactly. Team Eubank and Team Benn want to proceed. The British Boxing Border Control statement came out while we were here earlier to say that they're not going to be sanctioning the fight. They don't believe it's in the best interests of the sport. I can't really remember too many of those things happening in my time covering the sport. So I guess that's a long-winded way of saying that I have no idea what's going on.
So I obviously got to ask you this now, yeah, because I'm coming from a casual perspective, yeah? So all I've seen on Twitter, I was in a barber shop, bruv, with my guy Ben, getting shape-ups. Checked on Twitter, saw a man
Salute
thing.
to Ben, bro.
Yeah, salute to Ben. Saw that the fighter, somebody got busted for cod liver oils. I don't know, bruv. Yeah, so what is that? I don't even know the name of that banned substance. What is that?
So yeah, it is. I think Clomifene is the name of it. I researched it for about 2 hours early before we came in here, and I may have forgotten the name of it now, which is highly embarrassing. But this is the beauty.
We'll just call it the cod liver oils.
The cod liver oil. So so a VADA test came back with an adverse analytical finding, which is kind of the modern day term to say that there was a positive VADA test. Now, just to give people a bit of insight who are not familiar, I mean, I know you know all of this, but I know people who may be watching this aren't familiar with the fact that VADA, the voluntary anti-doping agency...
Yeah, it's not a Mexican, brother. You get me? Just letting you know. VADA, it's a what is it, bro? Tell them what it is.
VADA is the voluntary anti-doping agency. So it's kind of considered to be the gold standard of doping. Fighters will contract VADA 10 weeks out, 12 weeks out ahead of their fights. It's kind of like additional drug testing. So anytime you have to declare your whereabouts, so have like a whereabouts policy where literally down to the hour, I'm going to be at the gym at this time. I'm going to be at home this time. I'm going to be wherever Castillo spends his time at this time. Let's not go into that. Maybe one for afterwards. But you have to declare these things. And then, of course, when somebody turns up and wants to take a specimen, whether that's blood, urine, or other things, then you have to provide it for them. So as the story goes, Conor Benn had an adverse analytical finding. Eddie Hearn said earlier it was a few weeks ago, at the end of September. We're now waiting to see what happens from here. Of course, UKAD, which is the United Kingdom Anti-Doping.
I was just about to ask you that because I checked Eddie Hearn's Twitter and I saw a little statement come out and it said something about VADA and UKAD. So what's the difference between both of them?
So UKAD is specific to the UK Anti-Doping. And that was contracted around all British Boxing Board of Control events, which, of course, was the governing body ahead of this fight, but they have since, said that they're not going to sanction it due to not being in the best interest of the sport. So UKAD, again, have a random doping procedure where, again, they'll come and collect a sample. They have in competition and out of competition.
So they can pull up on you at random.
Anytime.
Anytime.
You could be with your gal.
You could be at your baby mum's house, everything. It's bust through the door like, yo.
I need a specimen.
Got you.
So VADA have what they call, so UKAD have the WADA list, which is the World Anti-Doping Agency, and it has a big list. You can check it out on the WADA website where it has the banned substances in competition and out of competition. Now, in the UK, in competition is considered on the day of the fight or on the night of the fight only. VADA's a little bit different. So VADA, you have to sign up, and then as soon as your pen touches that paper and you sign up, you can be tested at any time. They have more things on the VADA list than they do on the World Anti-Doping Agency list, which is what UKAD subscribed to. The substance that Conor Benn tested positive for is actually on both. So at the minute, we're a little bit up in the air. We're not really sure what the situation is. Somebody calling me to try and find out what's going on with the fight, somebody who's on the undercard. So we're not really sure, to be honest. I mean, those are kind of the general outlines of what constitutes or what is made up, what's comprised of these different doping agencies. But the long and the short of it is there's an adverse analytical finding. The B sample is still yet to be tested for people who don't know.
Yeah, what is the A and B sample?
So it's basically the same urine. So the A sample is one part of the same urine sample that gets tested. That has come back for a positive test from the VADA, from VADA. And now we're waiting on the B sample to be tested. I interviewed Eddie Hearn. Catch that on ID Boxing. It's available now on all digital platforms.
Shout out to Eddie, bruv.
Shout out to Eddie every time. Castillo in the main event always. So they're waiting on the B sample to be tested. I asked Eddie why it hasn't been tested yet, and he said that they need to go through procedures, they need to go through protocols and processes. At the minute, they are trying to wait and see what happens with the British Boxing Board of Control. As I understand it, there is an injunction to prevent the fight. There's an injunction to prevent the fight from being prevented to go ahead, if that makes sense. So it's all a little bit up in the air at the minute. Of course, we've seen in the past David Haye versus Derek Chisora, which was sanctioned under the Luxembourg Boxing Board of Control, which of course was at Upton Park. We've seen fights taken overseas.
So let me ask you this. So then what could possibly happen is that another organization could basically say, nah, it's all right, and the fight could still go on. So if, like, I don't know, somebody contacts Romania, bruv, shout out to Andrew Tate, pulls a few strings, bruv, you get me? Like, could it possibly happen, bruv? You get me?
I mean, it's part of the possibilities. There are a lot of possibilities in this fight, or with regards to the fight happening or not. Taking it to a different place is one of the possibilities, probably the most extreme out of the potentials. The other one is it being sanctioned under a different governing body. Bieber, not Justin Bieber.
Shout out to him, though, bruv.
Shout out to Justin Bieber. That's a good guess potentially for the main event. BIBA, they could potentially sanction the event. We've had the Irish Board of Control in the past sanction certain events, and then you have, as we say, Luxembourg Board of Control. But
so let me ask you something. If you had to give like a little percentage on how likely this is to happen, because I heard that once the British Board of demand them, like they give the ruling, it's final.
It's final for the British Boxing Board of Control. That is, of course, the main sanctioning body. It's the main governing body in the UK. So the vast majority of shows that people watching this, that they watch, is British Boxing Board of Control sanctioned. The fact that they've come out and said that they're not willing to sanction the fight, I can't remember that happening in recent times. So that is a big, that's a big play from the British Boxing Board of Control. If I had to put a percentage on it, I would say, given the fact that they've made that statement, that is 60-40 against the fight happening. And I think that's actually being slightly generous towards Eubank Jr. versus Benn.
So I've got to ask you this here. So how big is this controversy around the fight? Like, is this something that's actually, like, is it just a minor little boxing thing where it just happens? Or is this actually a really big thing?
Listen, every time somebody fails a drugs test or an adverse analytical finding in a drugs test, it's not good for the sport. This is a big story. Happening on Wednesday of a fight week as well. We've had situations in the past. The Dillian Whyte, Oscar Rivas situation is probably the most publicized of recent times in boxing. That was something that we didn't find out until several days after the fight. This is very much when we're gearing up for fight week. Last week we had them on Good Morning Britain. BBC are due to schedule to show a documentary on Friday. This is a big event for DAZN. If you look around here, Castillo, just tell people what this place looks like.
Bruv, look at this here. If you see the amount of marketing that's up in here, bruv, like, look at this. All the photos, all the amount of work that's gone into this thing, it's a madness. Like, for real. Like, I've seen a lot of fights go down. I've seen a lot of big events, but to me, this really is a big event. Like, the amount that's gone into it is a madness. So it'd be a shame for it to be cancelled. Do you get what I mean? But at the same time, I guess, in terms of boxing, like the federations, are they just really just protecting the integrity of boxing? Are they protecting their health?
And it's fighter safety is of paramount importance.
That's what I was about to say.
A lot of controversy has been around this fight. A lot of people have discussed the weight disparity between Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn. In my humble opinion, if this was Chris Jones versus Conor Smith, this fight wouldn't happen. The British Boxing Board of Control wouldn't have sanctioned it in the first place. It's Eubank Jr. versus Benn. It generates a lot of money. That is ultimately the big ruler when it comes down to boxing. It's all to do with money. And it's not good. DAZN, of course, is a huge, made a huge investment in the fight. This is a pay-per-view show. It's their first. I mean, look, with all due respect to KSI and some of the Misfits boxing stuff, this is the first time DAZN have ventured into the pay-per-view market in the UK. This is a big deal. This was the perfect event for DAZN to cross over into the casual audience. Eubank and Benn, all of those years ago, were people who gave us such a massive rivalry in British boxing. So everything that's gone on this week, it's not a great look for the sport, and fighter safety and the integrity of the sport has to come before any financial gain.
So should this fight go along and it actually happen, regardless of the result, does it still cast like a dark cloud over it? Should Conor Benn win? Does it kind of taint his victory if he does win? If Eubank wins, what does it mean for him if he was to win this?
I think
if it does go along.
I think if the fight happens, and it is a big if at the minute, I think it would have to. I think the big concern here and the big kind of elephant in the room is that look, if Conor Benn goes in there after all of this, Jeff Power walking on the show. How are you, Jeff? Big up Jeff every time.
Big man.
There he is. There he is. So if Conor Benn goes in there and he hits Chris Eubank Jr. with a shot, look, after all of the talk around the weight and the rehydration clause, and God forbid Chris Eubank Jr. is damaged in the fight. We've seen it with Chris Eubank Sr. and Michael Watson. We've seen it with Nigel Benn and Gerald McClellan. Then that's terrible for the sport. With all of this stuff that's in the build-up, and I think you're right. I don't think Conor Benn is necessarily going to get the credit that maybe he feels he deserves with all of this controversy in the build-up to the fight. So the answer is yes, I think it does take away from it. I do feel like there is a cloud over the spectacle. Look, I mean, there is the old saying, I mean, something that we spoke about earlier, that no press is bad press, and this is, it's going to cause ripples out there.
I'll be honest with you, bruv. Like, literally, I think this controversy is just blowing this out the water. Like, right now, I think everybody's eyes is on this. Everybody wants to see what's going to happen. I'm not going to lie. I really want to see what happens. Like, it just feels now like the tension is there. The real hype is there. And if there wasn't any sort of animosity between either of them, right now, the stage is set for a big event. Do you understand
absolutely.
what I mean?
Absolutely.
And another thing I wanted to know as well, like, literally, if Chris Eubank wins, this whole 60% thing, how does his stock rise if he wins?
I think potentially, and I think, in the build-up to this, Chris Eubank Jr. has played the role of the bad guy very, very well.
100%.
And I feel like on the back of this, inevitably, he's going to be turning babyface now. He's not necessarily going to be the bad guy going into this, rightly or wrongly. Rightly or wrongly, I mean, people are going to be looking at the fight, and look, we don't know the full ins and outs of what's happened with Conor Benn. I expect us to know more in 24, 72 hours, or potentially 2 or 3 weeks down the line, but we don't know at the minute. But people are going to look at it and see adverse analytical finding from one fighter, and they're going to see another fighter, and they're going to want the other fighter to win. That's just human nature, and that's boxing. So it's
Is there a possibility though now that this has happened? Could Chris Eubank sort of wave off that rehydration sort of thing? Could that kind of be negotiated now? Could that be changed?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen the contracts. Generally speaking, when a contract is signed, it is binding. But look, this is something that is an extenuating circumstance, just to say the least, I think if it came down to it and Chris Eubank Jr. said, look, I want to weigh 160 and I don't want a rehydration clause, could he do that? I mean, I don't know the ins and outs, but if that's possible, then I'm sure Chris Eubank Jr. may want to explore that. But also, from his perspective, he believes and has always believed in the build-up to this that 157 pounds, even with a rehydration clause,
that he could smack him up, basically. That's how he feels. That's how he feels.
So he feels like he's going to do it. Would he want to give Conor Benn that kind of, okay, well, yeah, but he came in at 160 and he didn't have the rehydration clause on the back of that. Would he want to give him something? I think Chris Eubank Jr. is the type of character where he might want to say, look, I'll come in at 157 with a rehydration clause. He was on performance-enhancing drugs, allegedly.
Allegedly, bruv.
Got to sling that in there all the time. A shout out Sean O'Toole, the ID boxing lawyer. And he'll say that he'll beat him anyway. So I don't see him wanting to kind of give up that ground to Conor Benn. As we can hear, everything is kind of slamming down around us. The security guard there is looking to get me in a full Nelson if we don't wrap this thing up in the next 3 or 4 minutes.
But right now, literally just keep locked into ID boxing. We don't know where it's going to go at the moment. It changes every day. So tomorrow it could be back on. Tomorrow it might be back off, bruv. We don't know. Yeah, just lock in. It might get sanctioned by the board of Romania, bruv. You get me? Shout out to Andrew Tate, bruv. Make it happen, bruv. You get me?
Now, the question that everybody wants to know here is if Conor Benn, for whatever reason, can't fight Chris Eubank Jr., are you up for the challenge?
Big man thing, bruv. I'll go in there and get knocked out in 2 seconds, bruv, for $500,000. Just, you get me, bruv? We could pattern that up. You get me? Get in the ring, do a little bob and weave thing, bruv. Take the L, buy a yard, bruv. That's what we're trying to do, bruv.
With everything that's going on at the minute, with influencer boxing, with DAZN, look, I mean, every time, genuinely, I'm not just saying it because he's here and he's with me. I walk around with a lot of people who people recognise. I mean, Andy Purwell, absolute celebrity in the Midlands over
Big
there.
Man team.
But nobody gets stopped like this man. So one thing that we have to say is whoever you're fighting, you're the A side, you're the main event.
Yeah, they got to be bigger than me, bruv. You get me? So it has to be a co-main event. You get what I'm trying to say? Like, it has to be a big thing. It has to be worth my while, bruv, because man's not about to be out here boxing for chicken wings, bruv. I'm not a dickhead. Big man ting.
Who are you looking to box? We can throw a name out there.
If the P's are right, then we could do this, bruv. But like I said, don't be trying to get man to fight you for oxtails and rice and peas, bruv. Allow it.
So we're going to have to wrap up here. We've got a couple of minutes or so left. Castillo, what's the plan for the rest of the evening?
Bruv, we're going to get some food, holler at your gal. You get me? Me and Rob at your gal, bruv. Not Rob, bruv, because he's in a relationship, bruv. You get me? You know me, bruv. You get me?
So that's
Snipe
it.
out now, bruv.
Snipe right now on all digital platforms. Oh, that reminds me of something.
Got a new tune coming out in 2 weeks, bruv. Did a photo shoot thing. It's gonna be a madness, bruv. So I'm telling you, when this music video drops, it's gonna change your life. RIP coming soon to all digital platforms, bruv.
That photo shoot. What can you tell people about the photo shoot?
Bruv, I'm telling you right now. Shout out to Jimmy, bruv. He patterned the thing nicely. I had a real photographer. You get me a real proper one. Didn't take it with my iPhone. It's not no budget thing. It's proper things, bruv. So look out for that.
Shout out Jimmy Brimacombe every time.
Shout out to him, bruv.
Okay, from myself, Rob Tebbutt, from the main event, Castillo.
Big man thing, ID boxing.
We're going to leave you here. We're going to catch up again at some point. As the news comes, we're going to be the hard-hitting journalists. The Rob and Castillo show will return. Look out for everything on ID boxing.
Big man thing.